Chapter 12 of... Is that the right way? Nope. All right. Midnight Howl, written by Claire Hutton and published by Scholastic. Here is chapter 12. I managed to get my mind off of Haley during our astronomy club meeting. The presentation was on exoplanets, and we made a lot of plans for the camping trip. Lily announced that Jack had promised to get the cooking club to make extra food as well as the hot dogs, hamburgers, and some more that they have every year. On the bus ride home, I started thinking about Haley again, though. Had I even seen Haley cross running water? I kept thinking back to her mysterious disappearance on the night of the full moon. Her dirt-streaked face and the leaf in her hair the next morning. I also couldn't help but notice her quiet watchfulness and the way that she got defensive whenever the subject of the wolves came up, and how nervous the horses had been about her. There were plenty of other possible explanations, I guessed, but it was also weird. As a scientist, what kind of test could I do to make sure? I stared out my window, but all I saw was a blur. Lily shifted in her seat next to me. Marisol, she said. Earth to Marisol. Her amused tone told me that this wasn't the first time she'd said my name. Sorry, I said. Are you okay? She asked. Yeah, I replied. You can tell me if you're worried about something, she said. Her eyes were serious and concerned. Are you homesick? Not really, I said. Not at all, I realized, a little surprised. I missed Tasha and some of my other friends, but I liked Wolf Valley. My old life seemed a long way away. I wanted to tell Lily everything. She was smart and practical, and I really wanted somebody to talk to. Listen, I said, and hesitated. I couldn't tell anyone at school. It wouldn't be fair to Haley. I was only here for a few months, and Haley, she lived here. If I started rumors about her and then left town, I'd be leaving her in a whirlpool of gossip she might be stuck through all the way through school. I'm listening, but I'm not hearing anything, Lily joked after a minute. How could I possibly get Lily's opinion without saying something that would either sound stupid or get her wondering about Haley? Haley said some interesting stuff about wolves today, don't you think? I said weakly. She was right, Lily said. Wolves were persecuted by humans in a lot of ways. They're really pretty peaceful animals for predators. I don't recommend trying to keep one as a pet, though, she grinned. And when I didn't say anything right away, I frowned. Marisol, you're not obsessing about Anderson's crazy idea, are you? What makes you say that? I asked guiltily. Lily sighed, rolled her eyes. Anderson's got a lot to say, but he's usually wrong. Last year, he was sure that we were due for a zombie invasion and had a bunch of kids spending lunch planning how they were going to defend themselves when the zombies arrived. Wolves are interesting, but they're animals. There's no such thing as a werewolf. Lily's words echoed in my mind as I trudged up the driveway to the house. There's no such thing as a werewolf. There's no such thing as a werewolf. Once I got inside, I could smell dinner cooking. The TV was on in the living room, and Molly waved to me from the kitchen. It was all very normal and cozy, and I felt 1,000,000% better. I checked my email and had told Tasha that the silver test had shown Haley wasn't a werewolf, and I hadn't shared my doubts with her. Her latest email was full of news about people back home, but for some reason, my life in Austin just really seemed very far and distant. Really far and distant away. On my way to my room, I passed Haley's open door. The light was on, but her room was empty, and the wall of animals watched me as I peered inside. One gray wolf seemed to be staring at me right in the eyes, his own yellow eyes wide, his lips drawn back over his teeth in a ferocious snarl. I hurried away, past my room, and tapped on my mother's door. She was sitting at the desk working over her laptop. Hi, honey, home already? This day just shot by. I have so much to do to pull the November issue together, but I think I might actually finish by the deadline. She got up from her chair and stretched. Her curls were messy, as if she'd been running her fingers through her hair all day while she thought. Anyways, she said, sitting down on her bed and patting the place next to her. I'm ready to stop and talk to my girl. How was your day? Pretty good, I said, sitting next to her. Astronomy club was cool, and we have a science quiz that I think I did okay on. The bed in her room was a sleigh bed, all curving wood, with a big yellow patchwork quilt. The walls were a lighter yellow with horse pictures hung here and there. Molly said the horse pictures were good business for the bed and breakfast. It was a happy-feeling room. I traced the square of the quilt with my finger. Something wrong, Marisol? My mom asked, leaning forward to look into my eyes. You seem distracted. I couldn't tell my mom everything. Molly was one of her oldest friends, and we were living in her family's house. But I could tell her some of it. Mom, did you ever hear wolves howling outside the house? I asked. She frowned. A few days ago, but not since then. It's nothing to worry about, sweetheart. Wolves stay away from people when they can. I'm not afraid about the wolves, I said. This was hard. Well, not because they're wolves. A few days ago, when you heard the howling, there was a full moon, right? She looked puzzled. If you say so. Well, there was that book in my room, I said nervously. Mom's frown disappeared and she started laughing. The werewolf book? Marisol, it's ridiculous. She pulled herself together and stopped laughing, although she was still smiling. Marisol, local legends are good for businesses like bed and breakfasts and tourist places. Molly puts those in the rooms just like the hiking guides. The book is fun to look at, but you just can't take it seriously. It's not just that, I said hesitantly. Some of the kids at school say there are werewolves. This one boy told me his grandmother knew a werewolf. And he said there are more wolves around during the full moon. I couldn't tell her anything about Haley, but I could mention the creepy feeling I'd gotten outside in front of the ranch. And sometimes I have a funny feeling, like something's watching me. Mother's face was pretty serious, but then her voice was still amused. Listen, sweetheart, she said. You know my grandma, my abuela, You know my grandmother, my abuela, came from Mexico, right? Right. I wondered where she was going with this. Well, my abuela, God bless her, was a loving, lovely woman. And she used to tell me stories that practically scared the pants off of me. My mom laughed, remembering. There were these scary, dramatic stories about the kookaburra. Oh, la, la, la. My Spanish is not very good. I'm getting tongue-tied. About the chupacabra. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. The chupacabra. Chupacabra? I am so sorry. I'm probably messing that up. Put it in the comments if you know how to say it. Sorry. So, scary, dramatic stories about this, which that thing that I can't say. It's sort of like a vampire and all kinds of monsters. My dad made her stop for a while because I wouldn't go down into the basement by myself. I was just sure that something was going to jump out at me. But I begged to tell her to start telling them again. Do you know why? Why? I asked. Because I'm like everybody else. People love to be scared, and they love telling scary stories. And that's all the werewolves they talk about around here are stories. Maybe you're feeling a bit vulnerable and jittery because you're still getting used to a new place. I leaned against her, nodded a little bit. It was true that I was still getting used to living here. But my worries about Haley being a werewolf had evidence to back them up. Sort of. I didn't think my evidence could convince my mother, though. She reached out and stroked my hair, pushing it out of my face. Does that make sense to you? Does it help? Sure, I lied and smiled at her. Really, though? Really? I didn't feel any better.